graduate Ranger School. I get back into my new troop, and slowly but surely I'm having to earn back my credibility after my leadership failure. But we're making progress and doing well. And we deployed Iraq at a probably the most volatile time in Iraq, the 06-07 deployments, to those 2 years. And for us, it was, as a special operations team, it was everything you could ever dream of. We conducted over 80 direct action missions, kinetic, capture kill missions, going after mid-level and high-level leaders. So, I mean, every young man who ever has aspired to be part of a special operations team, I mean, it was Call of Duty.
Right.
Highest level. I mean, real world, kicking indoors, fast roping on the targets, calling in the AC-130 on a regular basis, dropping bombs on bad guys' homes, and fast and furious, man. And I was, once again, proving myself and getting back into my groove and earning back the trust of my teammates. So everything was good. Got into some pretty ferocious engagements that thankfully we came out of. We didn't lose anybody from our troop. We did our sister troop, 2 troop. We lost multiple guys in that troop. July 6th, they had a big mission in Sauter City, and we had some friends who were wounded and guys killed. Several of our support guys, and Jason Lewis was killed on that mission. So that was, an eye-opener. We had guys wounded in June in a really big engagement. So I protected Erica from those things. I mean, I obviously she heard through the community when we lost guys.
Yeah.
But
I will say that deployment, like, it had a different feel to it, like even, going into it. And I just remember telling a friend of mine, like, I just don't have a good feeling about this. And I'm a pretty positive person, and I didn't watch the news. I wasn't trying to dig into where exactly they were going. But it had a very different feel than going to Afghanistan or anything else. He had me book plane tickets to go to his sister's wedding. It was supposed to be like a few weeks or a month after he was supposed to get home. And I knew, I knew, I was like, why am I booking these tickets? We are not going on this trip. So I didn't understand why, and I couldn't say like, hey, I don't think we should, I'm not sure if you're coming home. Like, I shouldn't book this trip, but I just knew like something in my gut. But I booked the plane tickets, and I think we both had, it was becoming more, obvious we had lost a lot of people, that was a possibility.
Yeah.
But I don't think either of us actually, I do think I think that they have to push the "I believe I'm invincible" button, and to a certain degree.
But I mean,
we have to.
It was a hard deployment, and I mean, as we got closer to the end, we had so many close calls that we were kind of like, our luck is running out.
Yeah.
We had been, I mean, just so many big gunfights that, thankfully, our injury, we had guys with minor wounds, shrapnel wounds. And man, we got into a huge engagement in June, and then the guy who got wounded the worst was our interpreter. They dropped grenades down on us from a roof, and our guys got, a little bit of frag, and our interpreter took the most of it. I mean, he was, our medic worked hard to save his life. And then we entered a house that was rigged with explosives, and somehow, thank God, the guy on the end of the command wire was not paying attention. I don't know if he went and took a leak or what happened, but our EOD guy realized it after we had been in the house for 5 minutes.
Oh.
We were rolling on a target in the east of Fallujah on Route Michigan. And before we rolled out of the wire, our 50 cal went down as we were test firing our weapons. So it took us about 15 minutes to fix it. We had to replace, whatever internal parts broke. Well, during that 15 minutes, a Marine convoy rolled up next to us and was like, hey, where are you guys going? And we were like, hey, we're rolling east down Route Michigan. They were like, we're going the same way. We're like, okay, roger that. Just be aware. We're going to come up behind you. And they left. Well, they hit an IED on Route Michigan that killed a couple of their guys. And if our gun had not gone down, we would have hit that IED. That would
Jeez. Where were you guys rolling in?
Armored Humvees.
Okay.
Yeah, we hadn't moved to the MRAPs at that point. They got those at the end of the deployment. So, just all these close calls that we were just like, man, we got to be really careful. And we were 1 week from going home. Everything was good. I had my career back on track. I was, we were talking orders. I was up for orders, and we were looking at Guam and Hawaii, I think. And but what I had requested was to screen for our next tier SEAL team.
Okay.
And that would have kept us in Virginia Beach. And not only that, it's where I wanted to go. It was my next career progression. And it's a big deal because to have messed up 2 years prior and then to get approved to do that really showed that I had fixed myself and
definitely
that the guys trusted and believed in me. Because what you have to have, your teammates have to give a thumbs up, and then the commanding officer has to sign off and endorse you for that screening.
Yeah,
everything was good. We were I think our first wave of guys were 1 week from going home. I was at least 2 weeks from going home, and we launched on we had we call it a time sensitive target. We got notified that the number one leader for the Al Qaeda organization in the Anbar province was going to be in a place northeast of Fallujah called Karma, Al Karma, a really dangerous place. Every time we had gone in there, we had gotten into a gunfight. And we launched on that mission, and long story short, we walked into a very well executed ambush. That leader was there. He had his entire security detail, which we estimate to be about 12 to 15 individuals. They had set up an ambush line in the vegetation as we were moving, and we walked into that ambush, and myself and two other teammates got all shot up by a machine gun. I took at least 8 rounds that we're aware of between my body armor, 2 rounds in the left elbow, helmet, left night vision tube shot off my weapon, turned to try and move back to a point of cover where the guys had moved back to, and I caught a round in the face that hit me right in front of the ear, traveled through my face, took off my nose, blew out my right cheekbone, vaporized my orbital floor, broke all the bones above my eye, broke the head of my jaw, shattered my jaw to my chin, and knocked me out. About a 40-minute gunfight. I was unconscious. We estimate 5 to 10 minutes. The guys thought I was dead. Thankfully, my team leader and the team did an amazing job in this gunfight, fighting, which literally was happening directly over me. I was pinned down probably 15 yards in front of them, and they were shooting at the enemy who was on the other side of me. We were, I was only 45 feet from the machine gun that had me pinned down. We ended up calling finally the closest fire mission ever executed in Iraq. We literally called rounds directly on our position, and my team leader ran forward and got me back, got a tourniquet on my arm and packed my face. And then me and my other wounded teammates got medevaced. So, survived, thank God.
Yeah.
And, thank the big man above saved me. I feel like, all I thought about was stay awake to stay alive, to see Erica and the kids again. But that started a whole new journey.
Yeah.
Well, the rock star. Once again, Erica is just absolutely amazing. When my commanding officer finally got a hold of her and said, "Hey, Jay's been shot," and he pulled no punches. He told her right over the phone, "Jay's been shot in the Army. He's been shot in the face." And they didn't really know my mental state yet. I wasn't out of surgery.
You were out of surgery.
Okay.
He said you were the luckiest guy that he knew that you were alive. You had come out of surgery. And in that initial call, and it is really kind of because he also told me he's wired shut, he's trached, you were not going to receive a call. So that was difficult to hear, and so I did kind of cling on to. He said, but he did just come out of surgery. He's the luckiest guy I know. He said, he's like, are my guys okay? Has my wife?
That's what I wrote. I couldn't talk, and I wrote 3 questions to my commanding officer.
my guy's okay. Has my wife been notified? And do I still look pretty? So he told him, he's like, your guys are okay. I'm still trying to contact your wife, and you were never pretty to begin with. So, to me, it was nice that it was like, it gave me some, I was like, because when you hear that he has a head injury, shot in the head, and I guess going back to where I said that, this deployment had a different feel to it. But this was just something, we didn't know anybody that had been severely wounded at that time. Yeah. That was not something, when I had that gut feeling, this certainly wasn't it. I think this was one of the things that was on our radar. So we did figure out later that while the gunfight was actually happening, I was at the command for the redeployment briefing. So I ran into friends and I'm there talking. And so I'm really there. I'm cutting up. I'm in the back of the room. I'm having a good time talking, laughing. And I'm like, I am here to get like the date that they're returning. That was the only thing I really cared about. And they're talking about the resources and PTSD and like, all these resources when the guys get home, and I am not really listening. So, oh my goodness, the next morning when I get this call, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what was, all these things that, they were talking about and being provided. But that was probably the furthest thing from either of our heads. And it's probably a good thing. I do think that you all have to have this, kind of this mindset, but it definitely was, we were in uncharted waters for sure.
For sure. Yeah. And I mean, I've read in the book, you were concerned because of all the people that had come back with an injury like yours, that you were concerned that it might be a strain on the relationship. Like maybe Erica's like, well, I'm going to check out of this, but you stood there, you stood by him, and it was like the same. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it was almost like you were stronger now, the relationship. It was the opposite effect that most people have, which I think is commendable.
Well, it was so amazing because yes, I was terrified of how she was going to handle this. I'm now grossly disfigured, and I don't know, this was probably the biggest test our marriage would have. And you like to think that the relationship is not superficial, but obviously there is a part of being married, there's a sexual attraction and an attraction to your spouse. So if suddenly you're horrifically disfigured, what is this going to do? And there's plenty of stories of spouses who walked away from other military members. I've read, I'm a big reader of history, so I've read stories about it in World War II and Vietnam, and wives who came into the military hospitals and literally walked into their wounded husband or boyfriend and said, I can't deal with this, and left.
Yeah.
And that was it.
Well, I think this all goes back to, what we talked about in the beginning, that friendship and that foundation. And because 100%. We had built that, if we didn't have that foundation and we were arguing and fighting and maybe on the verge, that could have been like, yeah, this isn't working. This isn't what I had in mind. But for me, that never crossed my mind. So for us, we had a good foundation. I don't think it was in my mind, what's next? What do we do? How do we fix this? How do we do this together? There was never a bad thought. And I do feel like because we had this and adversity, and I feel like everybody goes through, ours happened to be battlefield injuries, but I feel like everybody goes through this adversity. And for us, it made us stronger. I think we learned a lot about each other. We learned how to work together. Good days and bad days. I learned when I needed to give him a little bit of space to, have a pity party or feel sorry for himself, because it did, there was days that it really sucked. And then there was, other times where he needed that little bit of a push, okay, enough's enough. We're driving forward. So I think learning when to give space versus, some gentle nudging.
Sure. Well, I think it speaks to your relationship. You say we instead of I. You're, it's not like I don't know how I'm going to deal with this. It's like, well, how are we going to deal with this? And Jay, you thought the same thing. The first thing you thought of, not like, man, how am I going to live my life? How, how's this going to work for me in the future? You were worried about how it's going to work with Erica, and I think that's great. I think, and like you said, that foundation, without that, any adversity that follows your relationship is joint effort. It's always going to be that way because you have that foundation. So tell me about that. From there, like you're in the hospital, you got these tubes coming out of you. Like now you got to figure out some other stuff. Like now it's no longer, you're not going to be, I mean, did you know at that point they're kind of like, yeah, you're done? Or was it like there was a potential you could have came back, or you were trying to get back? Believe me, one of my first deployments, I was walking through the mess hall. We were on this compound, and there was a SEAL walking through. He had a fake leg. You probably know the guy. I can't remember. I didn't know who it was. I didn't know his name. But yeah, he was just walking through. From the knee down, it was a prosthetic, and he was going on missions and doing stuff. So I could see how, in your mind, you're like, I just got to get
his name. Would you know it?
No, I didn't even know him. We didn't know who it was, but yeah.
I bet he was the guy who was wounded when we had guys killed on our deployment. One of our guys, he lost his leg. EFP went through the vehicle below the knee. Yeah. And yeah, he went back operational for a couple deployments.
Probably the same guy. Yeah, probably the same dude.
Yeah, Jay did not, he was determined. And I think that I knew that his operational career, I mean, right off the bat, he was like asking the doctor, like, okay, how do you fix me and like get me back? And he went from probably being in the best shape of his life, having, in his world, the best deployment ever. Right. And now you're in a hospital bed needing help to eat, get up to go, to do anything. Right. So I think that it was a very difficult, and I think I remember him looking at the doctor and him being like, okay, like a couple of weeks, couple months, like, what are we looking at here, so that I can go back. And I'm cringing on the inside with this idea that he's like ready to get back. And I remember that doctor said, we're not talking weeks, we're talking years. Wow. And it was almost 40 surgeries over a 4-year period to put him back together. And he sought out every arm specialist and everything to see if he could get back operational. I think that I knew that wasn't possible, but it's kind of one of those things of learning when he needed to go through. So I think if I would have been like, no, you're done, like, I don't want this, I think that could have caused a lot of conflict. So even though I feel like I knew that, I kind of needed him to let him go through that process and for him to explore all the options and for him to come to that conclusion on his own. So
for sure. Yeah, I think that would have been a big friction point if you had been like, nah, just give it up. And he's in the mindset he's trying to get back. Yeah, that would have been bad, I think. Yeah, see, that's what I'm talking about. That we mentality, you're there to support him. I mean, we can all have our thoughts about how it's going to work out, but we don't know how it's going to work out. So you might as well support your spouse and anything they want to do. So how long did it take you to get out of the hospital and back kind of to some sort of normalcy?
So initially, he spent about 6 weeks in the hospital, and then they sent him home, which some people, with external fixators, stomach tubes, trach, like he came home with the whole 9 yards, which, I mean, we did have a little bit of home health care, that they would come in, but I mean, they weren't there daily. They weren't. Right.
My nurse.
Yeah. You missed the memo. I was a nursing school dropout. I didn't want to be, you missed that. But I was happy that, because for me, it was really 6 weeks at the hospital was a struggle of balancing the kids and balancing him. So I was happy to have everybody at home. But that, like I said, that kicked off a 4-year journey of, then he'd have a surgery and he'd be in the hospital for a week or two, and then he'd come home and recover for a week or two. And then, then he'd go back. So, I mean, it was almost like, I don't know, medical buds. It was, and right. That's also how he looked at it. And I think as we got further into the process of years into it, and that it may be a few months where life would go back to normal, I think that's where it became more difficult to me, that I'm like, oh, this was getting nice with soccer and routines and everything else, and now we have to stop and go back to the hospital. So it was definitely, it was a process.